The gentle horizon shuddered violently as another power surge ripped through its corridors, and Captain Tillish gripped his command chair with all four arms while his gill slits flared in distress around his neck. Reactor containment at 15%. His engineer called out from across the bridge, and her voice carried the trembling fear that every Varani felt when their carefully ordered world began to collapse. Tillish watched the main display flicker and die before sputtering back to life, and showing him exactly what he dreaded most. They were 3 days from the nearest
Galactic
Union outpost, and their reactor was eating itself from the inside out. The Varani were scientists and explorers and traders, but never warriors, and the gentle horizon reflected that peaceful philosophy in every design choice, from its curved organic hull to its complete lack of weapon systems. And now that gentle nature might kill them all, send the distress beacon. Tillish ordered and tried to keep his voice steady even as his skin shifted from calm blue to anxious purple. The communications officer hesitated with her webbed fingers hovering over the controls. And Captain, the reactor surge is amplifying our broadcast range significantly, and we might reach beyond. I know. Tillish interrupted because he did know, and every spacefaring species knew about the sectors. They marked on their maps with warnings and barriers and promises to never, ever venture close, but dying slowly in the void seemed worse than any theoretical danger, and so he nodded firmly. And send it now. The beacon launched with a pulse of energy that made the entire ship groan, and Tillish watched his crew exchange worried glances as they all settled in to wait for rescuers past. With agonizing slowness, and the reactor continued its death spiral, while his engineer worked miracles just to keep them breathing, and twice more, the gentle horizon shook hard enough to crack a viewing port on Deck 3. We have a response, the communications officer announced, and her skin flushed with relieved yellow. And multiple ships inbound in Galactic Union signatures, and they will reach us in 18 hours. Tillish felt his own skin shift toward hopeful green and allowed himself a moment to believe they might actually survive this, and 18 hours was cutting it close, but his engineer assured him she could keep the reactor stable that long. But then his tactical officer made a sound like a wounded creature. And Captain, we have additional contacts, and they are much closer, and they will arrive in less than 2 hours. Galactic Patrol? Tillish asked. Hopefully the tactical officer's skin went bone white. And no, sir, and the signatures match nothing in our database but the vector, and they are coming from the quarantine zone. The bridge fell silent, except for the ominous humming of failing systems, and every member of the crew understood what that meant. The quarantine zone and the Deathworld sector. And Sal-3 humans, cancel the beacon. Tillish ordered immediately, and cancel it now, and try to hide our signature and do whatever you can. But his communications officer shook her head miserably, and the beacon's automatic repeat is tied to the reactor, and I cannot shut it down without killing life support. Tillish felt cold spread through his body despite the growing heat from the failing reactor, and every child in the Galactic Union grew up hearing stories about the Deathworlders. She came from a planet that would kill most species in minutes with its crushing gravity and radiation-soaked environment and atmosphere full of reactive oxygen, and they had evolved alongside creatures that made nightmares seem tame by comparison. The Galactic Union had discovered humanity 40 years ago during a routine survey, and the contact team's report had been classified immediately, but fragments leaked as they always did. Humans were persistence predators who hunted their prey to exhaustion across endless distances, and they consumed the flesh of other creatures without remorse, and they had spent their entire history locked in wars with each other over resources and beliefs and simple tribal differences when they reached their own moon without even mastering gravity. Manipulation? The Galactic Council had panicked, and when they split the atom and created weapons that could sterilize continents, the Council had acted. Humanity was quarantined and blockaded and cut off from the galaxy, not because they were evil, but because they were dangerous in ways the peaceful species of the Union could not comprehend. They were coming here, all crew to emergency shelters, Tillish ordered, and his voice barely functioned. And seal all internal bulkheads and prepare for boarding, sir. They have not made hostile moves. His tactical officer offered weakly. They are humans, Tillish replied, as though that explained everything, and perhaps it did. The crew scattered to their designated shelters, and Tillish remained on the bridge with only his core officers because someone had to witness whatever came next, and someone had to try to negotiate if negotiation was even possible with creatures like that. The human ships appeared on sensors first as massive energy signatures that made the gentle horizon seem like a toy by comparison, and when they dropped from faster-than-light travel, the visual feeds captured them in all their terrible glory. They were not like Galactic Union vessels with their smooth curves and artistic flourishes and peaceful aesthetics, and instead these human ships were angular and brutal and covered in armor, plating that spoke of violence and expectation of violence weapons. Bristled from every surface and configurations, the Tilish's tactical system struggled to categorize and count. The ships moved with predatory grace that seemed impossible for something so massive. Lead ship was easily 5 times the size of the gentle horizon, and its hull was painted in dark colors that seemed designed to swallow light and a cross. Its bow, someone had painted symbols in the human alphabet that Tilish's computer translated. As UHN's indomitable, they are hailing us. The communications officer, Whisper Edelesh, almost ordered her to ignore it, but what was the point? And if they wanted to destroy the gentle horizon, they could do so easily, and perhaps communication might reveal some path to survival. Put it through, he said. The main screen flickered and resolved into an image that made Tilish's hearts skip beats in his chest. Human female stared at him from the screen with those distinctive forward-facing predator eyes that tracked movement with unsettling focus, and her skin was darker than the void outside, and her face was arranged in what the database suggested might be a friendly expression. Though Tillish found nothing friendly about those prominent teeth, this is Commander Sarah Reeves of the United Human Naval Ship Indomitable, the human said, and her voice was deeper and stronger than any Varani could produce. And we received your distress call and are moving to assist. And what is the nature of your emergency? Tillish opened his mouth and closed it again and tried to find words that might somehow convince this apex predator that they did not need help from creatures like her. He began and stopped. Your reactor is failing, Commander Reeves continued, and we are reading dangerous fluctuations in your containment field, and you have maybe 6 hours before catastrophic failure, and I am dispatching our engineering teams now, and they will stabilize your system and prepare for boarding in 15 minutes. The screen went dark before Tillish could respond, and he sat in his command chair, feeling the weight of doom settling over him like a burial shroud. What do we do? His communications officer asked. Kuala Tillish looked at his remaining bridge crew and saw his own terror reflected in their color-shifting skin. And we pray to the old waters that death comes quickly. Outside the viewports, the human warships moved into position around the helpless gentle horizon like predators surrounding wounded prey, and deep in his ancestral memory, Tillish felt the ancient fear that every prey species carries in its genes. The Deathworlders had come, and the gentle Varani could only wait and hope that the end would not be too painful. The human shuttles approached like hungry scavengers, and Tillish watched them through the external cameras with a sick feeling spreading through all 3 of his stomachs. Each craft was compact and aggressive in design, with angles that seemed deliberately threatening, and they moved with the confident speed of predators who never doubted their dominance. They are requesting docking permission at airlocks 3 and 7. The communications officer said, and her skin had gone almost white with fear, as if we could stop them. Tillish muttered, but he nodded anyway, because sometimes the ritual of permission mattered even when power made it meaningless. The first shuttle clamped onto airlock 3 with mechanical precision, and Tillish heard the clang echo through the ship's superstructure like a death knell, and then came the hiss of pressure equalization that meant the barrier between his crew and the Deathworlders was disappearing. They are opening the airlock. Security Officer Vrouge reported from his station near airlock 3, and his voice came through the communication system tight with terror. And I see them, and I see the channel cut to silence. Vresh, Tillish called out, and Vresh report only. Static answered, and Tillish felt his skin shift through every color of distress as his imagination filled the silence with horrors. Sir, I am reading life signs, the tactical officer said quickly, and Vresh is alive, and his vital signs show extreme stress, but not injury. Small comfort when the humans had clearly done something to silence The intercom crackled and a new voice emerged, speaking in thickly accented but comprehensible Galactic Common, and this is Chief Engineer Martinez of the Indomitable, and we are moving to your reactor room to begin repairs, and please direct your crew to stay clear of sections 4 through 9, and we are carrying heavy equipment, and the phrase sent chills through Tillish. Because what kind of equipment did Deathworlders consider heavy? All personnel evacuate sections 4 through 9 immediately. Tillish ordered across the shipwide channel, and this is not a drill and move now. Through the internal cameras, Tillish watched his crew scramble away from the designated sections. And some moved so quickly in their panic that they forgot to use the proper corridors and instead crawled through emergency maintenance tubes on. Then the humans appeared in the camera feeds. The first thing Tillish noticed was their size, because humans were massive compared to Varani and easily twice as tall and proportioned, with heavy bones and thick muscles that spoke of evolution under crushing gravity. Wore armor that covered them from head to toe in matte black material, studded with equipment and tools and weapons, and their helmets featured dark faceplates that revealed nothing of the faces beneath. Human carried containers and devices that looked heavy enough to crush Varani, but they moved with casual ease that demonstrated the terrible strength hidden in those compact frames. They are heading directly to engineering. The tactical officer confirmed unnecessarily, because Tillish could see them moving through his ship with purposeful strides that never hesitated. The humans knew exactly where they needed to go, so they had already mapped the entire vessel. And perhaps they had, because Deathworlder technology was supposedly centuries ahead of most. The Galactic Union species and Engineering 3 Varani technicians had remained behind despite the evacuation order, and Tillish watched through the cameras as they huddled together near the reactor access panel, with their skin displaying every shade of panic. Humans entered the room, and one of them raised a hand in what the database suggested was a greeting gesture. The lead human's voice boomed through the room's audio pickup, and we are here to help, and please step back from the reactor, and we need to access the containment field immediately. One of the Varani technicians fainted straight away and simply collapsed onto the deck plating, while the other two froze in place like prey animals, hoping the predator might not notice them. Lead human paused and turned to look at the unconscious Varani, and then said something in their own language that the computer could not translate. And another human moved forward and knelt beside the fallen technician. Please do not hurt her. One of the remaining Varani technicians managed to squeak out. The kneeling human looked up, and though the helmet hid their face, their posture seemed confused. And hurt her, and we are trying to help her, and she appears to have fainted and does. She'll have any medical conditions we should know about? You are not going to eat her? The technician asked. The humans all went still, and even through their armor and helmets, Tillish could sense something shift in the room's atmosphere. What? The lead human said, and no, and absolutely not. And what kind of who told you we eat people? The Galactic Council reports. The technician whispered, and they say, humans are savage and violent.
Ow.
And that you consume other species, and that you cannot be trusted. Another long silence followed, and when the lead human spoke again, their voice carried an edge that made Tillish's survival instincts scream. And the council said that, and well, that is just fantastic. And look, we do not have time for this right now, because your reactor is going to kill everyone on this ship in about 5 hours if we do not fix it immediately. And so, you can be afraid of us later, but right now, we need you to move. The Varani technicians practically fell over themselves, scrambling away from the reactor. And the humans moved into position around the failing system with practiced efficient side-alls. Watched them work through multiple camera angles, and despite his terror, he found himself fascinated by their competence. They used tools he did not recognize, and moved with a coordination that spoke of countless hours training together, and they seemed completely unbothered by the radiation levels that would have required his own crew to wear full protective gear. Their biology is adapted to high radiation environments. His science officer murmured from her station, and Galactic Council reports mentioned that, and their homeworld, has a weaker magnetic field than most inhabited planets, and they evolved with significant radiation exposure. One of the humans removed their helmet, and Tillish felt his skin go pale as he got his first unobstructed view of a human face. The human was male based on the database characteristics, and his skin was a light brown color, and his hair was dark and cut very short. And those predator eyes moved constantly as he examined the reactor with unsettling focus. But what struck Tillish most was the expression on the human's face, because it showed concentration and concern, but no malice and no hunger and no violence. Just a person doing a job, they are actually fixing it, the tactical officer said with wonder in their voice. And, look at the containment field readings, and they are stabilizing. It was true, and somehow these Deathworlders, with their massive frames and predator eyes and terrifying reputation, were carefully and methodically saving the gentle horizon and everyone aboard another human. Voice came through the ship's communication system, and this is Medical Officer Chen. And we are setting up a triage station in your cargo bay, and we have medical supplies, and we understand several of your crew sustained injuries during the reactor failure, and we can help if you allow us. Tillish looked at his remaining bridge crew and saw his own confusion reflected back at him, because this was not how Deathworlders were supposed to behave. Permission granted, he said finally, because what else could he say? And his crew needed help, and perhaps being healed before being eaten was better than just being eaten more. Humans boarded through Airlock 7, and these ones carried containers marked with symbols that the computer identified as medical insignia, and they moved to the cargo bay and began setting up equipment with the same efficient precision as the engineering. Team-injured Varani crew members began appearing in the cargo bay hesitantly, and the humans greeted each one with what seemed like genuine concern and began treating their wounds with careful hands and gentle movements that contradicted everything the Galactic Council had taught Tillish. Watched one human medic treat a young Varani who had been burned during the initial reactor surge, and the human's hands were steady. And sure as they applied some kind of gel that immediately reduced the burn victim's distress colors, "You will be fine," the human said, "and this is a synthetic skin that will help you heal and keep it covered for 3 days, and you should feel much better by tomorrow." The young Varani stared at the human with wide eyes. "And thank you. You are welcome," the human replied and smiled, and those teeth that had seemed so threatening suddenly just looked like teeth. Tillish sat in his command chair and felt the foundations of his understanding begin to crack, because these were not mindless brutes or savage monsters. These were people who had dropped everything to answer a distress call from complete strangers, and who were now working tirelessly to save those strangers, despite receiving only fear and suspicion in return. Captain his communications officer said quietly, "And I think we may have been wrong about them." Tillish did not answer because he was too busy trying to reconcile 40 years of propaganda with the reality unfolding on his ship, and he was beginning to suspect that the galaxy's understanding of humanity was dangerously and deliberately flawed. Commander Sarah Reeves stood in the airlock of the Gentle Horizon, studied the Varani ship's interior with professional interest while trying not to let her frustration show on her face. 40 years of isolation and quarantine, and the first aliens they actually got to meet were absolutely terrified of them, and it was both insulting and deeply sad. "Permission to come aboard, Captain Tillish?" she said into her helmet communicator, and kept her voice as gentle as possible, though gentle was not exactly her natural setting after 20 years in the United Human Navy. "You're already aboard, Commander," came the reply in the translator. Made the Varani captain's voice sound resigned and defeated fair. Point and Sarah thought as she stepped through into the ship proper, and her boots clanged against the deck plating with sounds that seemed far too loud in the quiet corridor. She had left most of her security team on the shuttle because showing up with a dozen armed Marines seemed like exactly the wrong move when dealing with people who already thought humans were monsters. Instead, she brought only Lieutenant Park and Ensign Williams, and both had orders to keep their weapons holstered and to smile a lot, even though smiling apparently looked threatening to some species. Corridor leading to the bridge was curved and organic looking, with soft lighting that reminded Sarah of an aquarium back on Earth, and everything was scaled smaller than human standard because the Varani were only about a meter tall. She had to duck slightly to avoid hitting her head on the Durframestu, Varani crew members pressed themselves against the walls as she passed, and their skin flashed through colors that her cultural database suggested meant fear and submission, and Sarah tried to make herself seem smaller, which was basically impossible when you were 180 centimeters of human female who spent 3 hours a day in the gym. "We are not going to hurt you," she said as she passed, but they just cowered harder. The bridge was surprisingly spacious and filled with stations that curved around a central command chair where Captain Tillish sat with all 4 of his arms gripping the armrests in his gill slits. Fluttering rapidly, Sarah had studied the available information on Varani biology during the 2OR journey here, and she knew that gill slit fluttering meant high-stress Captain Tillish. She said and came to a stop at what she hoped was a respectful distance. "And I am Commander Sarah Reeves, and I want to assure you that we mean you no harm, and we are only here to help." Tillish's skin shifted through several colors that the database unhelpfully labeled as emotional distress multispectrum before settling on a pale blue Y. He asked simply. Sarah blinked. "And why? What why help us?" Tillish said, "And the Galactic Council has quarantined your species and declared you're dangerous and you have no obligation to respond to our distress, and you gain nothing from saving us." And so why? Sarah considered her answer carefully. Because this felt like an important moment, and possibly the most important first contact moment in human history, because you needed help, she said finally, "and because we received a distress call, and because leaving people to die in space when you can save them is wrong, and those reasons are enough." Tillish stared at her with his large dark eyes. "And the Council says humans are violent and aggressive, and that you solve problems through force, that you cannot be trusted in civilized space. The Council quarantined us without ever actually talking to us." Sarah replied and felt old anger stirring in her chest, and they saw our military capabilities and our history and decided we were too dangerous, and they never bothered to ask what we actually wanted. "And what do you want?" Tillish asked. "To not be alone in the universe," Sarah said honestly, "and to meet other species and share ideas and maybe trade and explore together. And we wanted to join the Galactic Union, but they would not let us. And so we have been sitting in our little corner of space for 40 years. Wondering if maybe they were right about us, were they?" Tillish asked. "And right about you?" Sarah smiled without showing her teeth, because she had learned that teeth made species nervous. "And you tell me, Captain," and we dropped everything to answer. "Your distress call, and we are fixing your reactor and treating your wounded and asking for nothing in return. And does that sound like a violent and aggressive species to you?" Tillish's skin shifted to a thoughtful purple color. "And no," he admitted, "and it does not. And I think perhaps we have been told many lies join the club," Sarah muttered, and then louder, "And Captain, with your permission, I would like to stay aboard while my teams complete repairs, and I can answer any questions you might have about humans, and maybe we can figure out this whole first contact thing together. You are not leaving guards to ensure we do not escape?" Tillish asked suspiciously. "Where would you go? Reactor is failing, and you are 3 days from the nearest outpost, and besides, we are not jailers, and we are rescuers, and there is a difference." Tillish seemed to relax slightly, and his grip on the armrests loosened. "And very well, Commander, and you may stay, and I have many questions over the next several hours." Sarah sat in the Varani bridge and answered those questions as honestly as she could, and she learned that almost everything the Galactic Council had told the wider galaxy about humanity was either exaggerated or completely false. Yes, humans came from a high-gravity world, but that just meant they were stronger, not that they were mindlessly violent. Yes, humans were persistence predators, but that meant they were determined and patient, not that they were bloodthirsty savages. Humans had a history of warfare, but they also had a history of art and music and literature and philosophy and cooperation. "We are complicated," Sarah said when Tillish asked how humans could be both warriors and scientists, "and just like every other species, I imagine, and we are capable of great violence but also great compassion, and we choose compassion when we can. The Council believes you would choose violence." Tillish said, "The Council never gave us the chance to choose anything." Sarah replied. The ship's intercom crackled, and Chief Martinez's voice came through. "And Commander, we have stabilized the reactor, and it will hold for at least 6 months. And we recommend they get proper repairs at a shipyard, but they are no longer in immediate danger. Outstanding work, Chief. Sarah said, and felt relief wash through her, and have your team return to the Indomitable, and well done. She turned back to Tillish, and your ship is safe. Captain, and you can reach the nearest outpost without problems now, and we will escort you if you want, or we can leave if our presence makes you uncomfortable. Before Tillish could answer, the communications officer made a sharp sound, and Captain, we have multiple contacts emerging from FTL, and they are Galactic Union ships, and 3 cruisers, and they are hailing us. Sarah felt her stomach drop because this was about to get complicated. Main view screen activated and showed an insectoid face with compound eyes and clicking mandibles, and the translator rendered. Its voices clipped and authoritarian. This is Commander Xyloth of the Galactic Union Patrol, and we received your distress call. It's a gentle horizon, and we are here to assist. And we order the human vessels to depart immediately, and your presence violates the quarantine. And leave now, or face consequences. Sarah stepped forward so Xyloth could see her, and Commander Xyloth, I am Commander Reeves of the United Human Navy, and we responded to a legitimate distress call, and we have repaired the Gentle Horizons reactor, and treated their wounded, and we will leave when Captain Tillish releases us, and not before. Xyloth's mandibles clicked rapidly, and you have contaminated this vessel, and these crew members will need to be quarantined, and the Gentle Horizon will be impounded for decontamination, and Captain Tillish, you are ordered to transfer command to Galactic Union Authority immediately. Tillish stood from his command chair, and his skin flushed an angry red color that Sarah had not seen before, and Commander Xyloth, the humans saved my ship and my crew, and they asked for nothing, and they treated us with respect and kindness, and you arrived 6 hours after we would have died, and now you want to impound my vessel. The quarantine protocols are clear. Xyloth said, and any contact with the Deathworlders requires full decontamination, and Captain, you do not understand what they are capable of, and they are dangerous. The only thing I saw them do was save lives. Tilla shot back, Captain, you are clearly suffering from shock. Xyloth said dismissively, and I am taking command for your own safety and human vessels. You have 30 seconds to begin departure, or we will open fire. Sarah looked at Tillish and saw real fear in his eyes, but it was not fear of humans anymore. And Commander Reeves, what happens if Xyloth impounds my ship? I honestly do not know. Sarah admitted, but given that he is threatening to shoot us for the crime of helping you, I doubt it will be pleasant, and the choice is yours. Captain, but if you want us to stay, we will stay. Tillish's skin shifted through a rapid series of colors and then settled on a determined green, and communications officer opened a channel to Commander Xyloth. Channel open, Sir Commander Xyloth. Tillish said clearly, and I am Captain Tillish of the Varani research vessel, Gentle Horizon, and I refuse to transfer command. I refuse to allow my ship to be impounded, and the humans are here at my invitation. And I order you to stand down. You are making a terrible mistake. Xyloth hissed. Perhaps Tillish agreed, but it is my mistake to make. The first shot came without warning, and Tillish watched through the view screen as a brilliant beam of energy lanced across the void. Toward his ship, he closed all 4 eyes, waiting for the impact and the death that would follow, but the death never came. Instead, the beam struck an invisible barrier and scattered into harmless light, and Tillish opened his eyes to see the massive form of the Indomitable positioned directly between his ship and Commander Xyloth's cruiser. What just happened? He asked, though his voice came out as barely a whisper. Our shields absorbed the hit. Commander Reeves said calmly, though. Tillish could see tension in the way she held her shoulders, and your ship is undamaged. He shot at us. Tillish said stupidly because his brain refused to process what his eyes had just witnessed. And Xyloth shot at the Gentle Horizon. He did. Reeves confirmed, and her voice went hard as steel, and all crew. This is Commander Reeves. And brace for combat maneuvers, and Captain Mill. I need you to stay calm, but calm was impossible because Tillish had just watched a Galactic Union commander deliberately fire on a civilian research vessel, and his entire understanding of the universe was crumbling More shots followed, and Xyloth's 3 cruisers opened fire in a coordinated barrage that lit up the darkness of space with deadly light. Human fleet Mova Tilish had seen Galactic Union warships maneuver during training exercises, and they moved with elegant grace that prioritized efficiency over speed. Human ships moved like living predators. The Indomitable rolled on its axis, while maintaining its protective position in its point defense systems, came alive with hundreds of tiny bursts that intercepted incoming fire with impossible precision to destroyer-class vessels that had been holding position. Suddenly accelerated, 2 speeds that made Tilish's eyes water, and they swept around the flanks of Xyloth's formation, trailing weapon fire that never quite hit but came close enough to force the Union ships to break formation. Why are they not shooting back? Tilish demanded, because the human ships clearly had overwhelming firepower, and yet they only dodged and defended because we do not want a war. Reeves said tightly, and we want to save your ship and keep everyone alive, and shooting back would start something that could kill billions, and we are trying very hard not to be the monsters everyone thinks we are. Another barrage struck the Indomitables' shields, and this time Tilish saw the shimmer of energy across the massive vessel's hull, and some of those shots got through. They are taking damage, his tactical officer reported with horror in his voice. And the humans are taking hits meant for us, I know, Reeves said quietly. Why? Tilish asked. And the question seemed to be all he could manage anymore, because it is the right thing to do. Reeves answered as though that explained everything, and perhaps for humans at Digiloth's face appeared on the view screen again, and his compound eyes glittered with something that might have been rage or fear or both. And you see what they are, Captain Tilish, and they turn our space into a battlefield, and they bring violence wherever they go, and this is why they were quarantined. You shot first, Tilish found himself saying, and his skin had gone so dark with anger that it was almost blackened. You fired on my ship, Commander, and you tried to kill my crew, and the humans only defended us. They corrupted you already. Xyloth hissed, and the Deathworlders have poisoned your mind, and you cannot see the danger, and I am ending this now for the good of the galaxy. The channel cut, and Tilish felt cold certainty settle into his bones, because he knew what came next. He's going to destroy my ship, he said flatly. Not while we are here, Reeves replied, and her jaw was set in a way that made her look carved from stone. You cannot stop 3 cruisers forever, Tilish said, and eventually they will get through. Then we better make sure they do not have forever. Reeves said, and touched her communicator. And Captain Chen, this is Reeves, and I need you to do something, and you are not going to like it. Tilish watched the human fleet reposition as whatever plan Reeves had concocted took shape, and the Indomitable held its position like an immovable fortress while the other vessels began a complex dance around Xyloth's ships. What are they doing? His tactical officer asked, creating a communication corridor. Reeves said, and Captain Tilish, I need you to broadcast on all frequencies, and I need you to tell the galaxy exactly what happened here, and tell them the truth about how the Galactic Union tried to kill you and how humans saved you. They will never believe me. Tilish protested, and Council controls all major communication networks, and they will suppress anything that contradicts their narrative. Let them try, Reeves said with a fierce smile, and we are going to broadcast this on so many frequencies and through so many relays that they cannot possibly block it all, and some of it will get through, and sometimes all you need is a little truth to break through a big lie. Tilish looked at his communications officer. And do it and broadcast everything, and include our sensor logs and medical records and everything that proves what happened here. Broadcasting now. The communications officer confirmed, and her webbed fingers moved across the controls with purpose. Tilish stepped in front of the visual pickup and tried to calm his racing hearts. And this is Captain Tilish of the Varani research vessel Gentle Horizon, and I am transmitting this message to all civilized space. And today, my ship suffered a catastrophic reactor failure, and we sent a distress call, and the humans responded. He paused and gathered his thoughts, and the Galactic Council told us that humans were violent savages who could not be trusted, and they told us that humans would harm us if given the chance, and these were lies. The words felt dangerous and liberating at the same time, and the humans repaired our reactor and treated our wounded and asked for nothing in return, and they showed us only kindness and respect. And when Commander Xyloth of the Galactic Union arrived, He ordered the humans to leave, and when we refused to abandon them, he opened fire on my ship, Tilesh's. Skin flushed with the colors of righteous anger and a galactic union, Commander deliberately fired weapons at a civilian research vessel.
Oh.
Because we dared to accept help from humans, and the only reason my crew and I are alive right now is because those same humans are using their ships as shields to protect us. And they are taking damage meant for us, and they are refusing to return fire because they do not want to start a war. He leaned closer to the pickup, and the Galactic Council has lied to us about humanity, and they have kept these people isolated out of fear, not for our safety, but for their own power and unpanned. I am transmitting all sensor logs and medical records to prove what I am saying, and I ask every species in the galaxy to look at this evidence and decide for themselves who the real monsters are. The bridge fell silent after he finished. Tilesh realized he had probably just ended his career and possibly his freedom, but he found he did not care. That was a good speech. Reeves said approvingly. It was the truth. Tilesh replied outside the viewports. The battle continued in its strange one-sided fashion with Xyloth's ships firing and the humans defending, and Tilesh watched as shot after shot hammered into the indomitable shields. How long can they hold? He asked quietly. As long as they need to, Reeves said. But Tilesh heard the uncertainty beneath her confidence then. Something changed. Gilith's ships suddenly broke off their attack and began moving into retreat positions. And for a moment, Tilesh dared to hope that the commander had come to his senses, but then his communications officer made a sound of pure distress. And Captain, they are charging their main batteries, and those are capital ship weapons, and they can punch through anything. Tilesh looked at Reeves and saw her face go pale beneath her dark skin because even human shields had limits, Captain Chen. Reeves said into her communicator, and her voice was steady. Despite what must be fear, and if those main batteries fire, you are authorized to disable them with minimum necessary force. And I say again, minimum necessary force. And we are still trying to avoid a war here. Understood, Commander. Came the reply from the Indomitable, and targeting their weapon systems only, and weapons free, on your mark. Tilesh watched the tactical display as energy readings from Xyloth's cruisers climbed toward critical levels, and those weapons could vaporize his ship in seconds mark. Reeves said the Indomitable finally fired back, but instead of the massive destructive barrage Tilesh expected, he saw 3 precise beams lance out from the human warship, and each beam struck exactly 1 point on each of the Union cruisers. The results were immediate. Andromeda-Ticholoth's main batteries exploded in cascading failures that left the weapons systems completely disabled, but the ships themselves remained intact and functionally. Was the most precise display of weapons targeting Tilesh had ever witnessed, and the message was clear. Humans could have destroyed those ships completely, but chose to only disable their weapons. Galactic Union vessels. Reeves broadcasted on an open channel, and you are no longer capable of threatening this civilian ship, and we are still hoping to resolve this peacefully, and please stand down. For a long moment nothing happened, and Tilesh held his breath waiting to see if Xyloth would escalate further. Then the Union cruisers began backing away with their weapon ports dark, and their engines turning them toward the nearest jump point. 3 days later, the Gentle Horizon limped into the neutral trading station. Crossroads with a human escort that made every ship in the vicinity suddenly find urgent reasons to be somewhere else. Tilesh watched from his bridge as vessels scattered before them like schools of fish fleeing a shark, and he might have found it funny if it was not so sad they were afraid. His communications officer observed unnecessarily. They will learn, Commander Reeves said from where she stood beside Tilesh's command chair, and she had remained aboard the Gentle Horizon during the entire journey, and fear based on ignorance fades when confronted with truth. You have a lot of faith in truth. Tilesh said, I have faith in people, Reeves corrected, and most species are fundamentally decent, and when they see evidence that contradicts their beliefs, they adjust those beliefs, and it just takes time. The trading station loomed ahead, and it was a massive structure that had been built over centuries by dozens of species, and it served as one of the few truly neutral spaces where anyone could dock regardless of their government or species. Crossroads Control, this is the Varani vessel. Gentle Horizon requesting emergency docking. Tilesh transmitted. There was a long pause before the response came, and Gentle Horizon, we see you have a human escort, and we need to verify your status, and are you under duress? Tillish felt his skin flush with irritation and crossroads control. We are not under duress, and the human vessel's saved. Our lives and they are here at our invitation, and we request docking permission immediately. Another pause and permission granted. Gentle Horizon, and please proceed to docking bay 7, and your escort vessels will need to remain at a minimum distance of 10 kilometers from the station. That is discrimination. Reeves said flatly, that is fear. Tillish replied, but it is a start, and they are letting us dock, and that means we can share our story. The Gentle Horizon eased into its assigned docking bay, and Tillish could see through the viewports that a crowd had already gathered, and news of their arrival had spread quickly, because every major information network in the galaxy had been covering their story. His broadcast had done exactly what Reeves predicted, and despite the Galactic Council's attempts to suppress it, the message had spread across hundreds of systems, and now everyone wanted to hear the Varani captain, who claimed humans were not monsters. Are you ready for this? Reeves Eskedalj looked at his crew and saw determination in their color-shifting skin, and we are ready, and we will tell them everything. I should stay aboard, Reeves said, though Tillish could hear the reluctance in her voice, and my presence might make people uncomfortable. Your presence will make people confront their prejudices, Tillish countered, and you are coming with us, Commander, and my crew. And I will not hide the fact that we count humans among our friends now. Reeves smiled, and this time she did show her teeth, and Tillish was pleased to discover he no longer found them threatening. The docking ramp extended, and Tillish led his crew out into the station with Reeves walking beside him, and behind them came Lieutenant Park and Ensign Williams, and both humans kept their weapons holstered but visible. The crowd that had gathered in the docking bay pressed back as they emerged, and Tillish saw fear and curiosity and hostility in equal measure among the gathered aliens. Captain Tillish. A reporter called out, and she was a Kelvin with crystalline features that chimed when she moved. And is it true that a Galactic Union commander fired on your vessel? It is true, Tillish confirmed, and stopped to address the crowd directly. And Commander Xyloth of the Galactic Union deliberately targeted my ship after we refused to abandon the humans who had saved us. And the only reason my crew survived is because those humans used their own vessels to shield us. But the Council says humans are dangerous. Another voice called out, and Tillish could not identify the species in the crowd. The Council lies, Tillish said bluntly, and the humans who responded to our distress call showed us nothing but kindness and professionalism, and they repaired our ship, entreated our wounded, and asked for nothing in return. And when violence came, it came from the Galactic Union, not from humanity. Ooh. The Council has released a statement claiming you are suffering from Stockholm Syndrome, the Kelvin reporter said, and they say the humans have manipulated you. Tillish felt his skin go dark with anger, and the Council can say whatever they want to protect their narrative, and I have sensor logs and medical records and testimony from my entire crew, and all of it proves that humans are not the monsters we were taught to fear. Reeves stepped forward, and the crowd recoiled slightly, and I am Commander Sarah Reeves of the United Human Naval Ship. Okay, indomitable, and I want to say something if I may. The crowd fell silent, and Tillish nodded encouragingly. Humanity has been isolated for 40 years, Reeves said, and her voice carried across the docking bay, and we have been called monsters and savages and dangers to civilized space, and all of this was decided without anyone bothering to actually talk to us. And we are not perfect, and we have a complicated history, and we come from a world that is harsh by galactic standards. She paused and looked around at the assembled aliens, but we are also a species that values courage and loyalty in protecting those who cannot protect themselves. And when we heard Captain Tillish's distress call, we did not hesitate, and we did not ask what species he was or whether helping him would benefit us, and we just responded because it was the right thing to do. That is easy to say. Someone called from the crowd, it is easy to say and harder to prove. Reeves agreed, but we just proved it, and we took hits meant for the Gentle Horizon, and we refused to start a war even when fired upon, and we disabled Commander Xyloth's weapons without destroying his ships when we easily could have. Those are not the actions of mindless brutes, eh? New voice spoke up, and this one belonged to a tall, mantis-like being that Tillish recognized as a Tharsis merchant. And what do Humans want from the galaxy. Reeves considered the question carefully. And we want what every species wants, and we want to be part of something larger than ourselves. And we want to trade and learn and explore and make friends, and we want our children to grow up in a universe where they are not automatically feared and hated for accidents of their evolution. The Council will never accept humanity into the Galactic Union. The Tharsis said, perhaps not. Reeves acknowledged, but the Council does not speak for every species, and maybe it is time for the galaxy to realize that.
Ow.
Over the next several hours, Tillish and his crew gave statement after statement to reporters and investigators and diplomats, and they told the same story repeatedly in their censor. Logs confirmed every detail. Commander Reeves answered questions with patience and honesty, and Tillish watched as the crowd's hostility gradually shifted to uncertainty and then to cautious curiosity. Young Virani, engineer named Presh, who had been one of the technicians in engineering during the repairs, approached one of the human guards hesitantly. Ensign Williams, Presh said quietly, and I wanted to thank you for fixing our reactor, and you saved my life. Williams smiled and knelt down to be at eye level with the smaller alien. And you are welcome, and that is what we do. And how are your burns healing? Very well, Presh said, and held up his arm where the human medical gel had been applied. And your medicine works faster than ours? Different evolution? Different biochemistry? Williams said. And we had to develop fast healing techniques because our world kept trying to kill us, and so something good came from growing up on a death world. Presh laughed, and the sound drew attention from the crowd, because it was a sound of genuine amusement, not fear. Can I ask you something? Presh said. Sure. What is? Earth-like, Presh asked, and your homeworld. Williams's expression turned distant and fond. And it is beautiful and dangerous and full of life, and we have oceans that cover most of the planet and mountains that reach into the clouds and forests, with trees older than some civilizations, and it is harsh, but it made us strong, and it made us appreciate beauty, because beauty is harder to find when everything is trying to survive. I would like to see it someday, Presh said. Maybe you will, Williams replied, and maybe when this is all over, the quarantine will end, and we can show the galaxy that Earth is not a nightmare world, and it is just home. Tillish watched the exchange and felt hope stir in his chest, because this was how change began, with small moments of connection between individuals who chose to see each other as people rather than categories. 3 days after their arrival at Crossroads Station, the Galactic Council issued a formal summons requiring Captain Tillish to appear before them and answer charges of violating the quarantine and endangering galactic security. They want to silence you, Reeves said when Tillish showed her the summons, and they want to discredit you before your story spreads any further. Let them try, Tillish said, and his skin had settled into a determined green. And I will go before the council, and I will tell them exactly what happened, and they can do whatever they want to me afterward. You do not have to do this alone, Reeves said, and humanity will stand with you. I know, Tillish said, and that is why I'm not afraid.